Hello, fellow adventurers, and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today here on Mysterious Adventures. Want to apologize for the hiatus. It's been since August, I do believe, so it's been quite a while since the last episode. Busy schedules. I basically got an upgrade at the job, but of course, again, kind of like a slightly more demanding schedule. Not majorly, but also getting caught up into other things. So apologize. It's been a good just about 2 months pretty much since the last release of the show where I talked about a coworker that had unfortunately committed suicide. Definitely devastating, and to think that that coworker happened to be arguably the biggest fan of the show. So that was really sad and heartbreaking to say the least. I protected the coworker's name by having a similar name be the host of being the actual title of the last episode. So today we're going to get into a cryptoid being that has been well established over the years, or cryptid being that's been well established over the years for forever, dating back up to thousands of years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, and has been a part of conversations throughout many, many, many podcasts. Even the actual main topic of the shows like Sasquatch Chronicles, stuff like that. Obviously big parts of the confessionals, Blurry Creatures. They always even open their show up when they have a guest, which is all the time, of course. When they have their guests on, they always ask the first thing, well, first things first, what are your thoughts on Bigfoot? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit, is Bigfoot. We're going to have several episodes about Bigfoot, I believe, off and on, stories, conversations, mysterious adventures, overall thoughts on Bigfoot going forward. But today, the general topic of this episode will be what was called the Bigfoot War of 1855. I was like, wait a minute, the Bigfoot War of 1855, I gotta check this out, and quite fascinating it was indeed. So the location of the legend was the Choctaw Nation's territory in 1855. That would be, of course, Native Americans. And, well, yeah, it's a significant detail. The Choctaw people had been forcibly relocated to this region from their ancestral lands during the Trail of Tears. Yeah, that would be during the presidential terms of Andrew Jackson. Unfortunately, the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson fought against the banks to prevent what a lot of people today call the New World Order. I know exactly what that is, very aware of that, and it's not good. but this was one of the bad things that Andrew Jackson did, was to forcibly remove a lot of these tribes from their homelands, their ancient ancestral lands, to move somewhere else, to move to the west, basically, along the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. So very sad. I definitely disagree with what took place there. There's no doubt. How can you? How can you not? Anyway, Europe, the band in the 1980s, even made a song called "The Trail of Tears." So that was too bad. Cherokee. It was the Cherokee, and they talked about the Trail of Tears on there. So great song, actually. By 1855, these tribes, this would be the Choctaw, were Choctaw. By 1805, they were establishing a new life. The legend, framed in the context of their warrior tradition, may reflect the tribe's history of conflict and its adaptation to a new and wild territory. So it's like, what was there to behold in this whole Bigfoot War of 1855? What took place? So the Bigfoot War of 1855 is a modern legend, not a historically documented event, unfortunately. The story alleges a conflict between Choctaw warriors and a group of Sasquatch-like creatures in what is now Oklahoma and Arkansas. So that kind of general area. And I'd like to get into the episode as well, talking some more about ancient battles that were fought there in way back, like giants and like regular sized people and little people, where there were bodies. There have been bodies, bones and stuff found for bodies ranging into the tens of thousands. So we're talking a battle the size of insane in the Ozark area in Arkansas. I'd like to get into that someday. Got to do some more research before doing an episode about that. But holy cow, that's a little appetizer here as we're in this part of the world, part of the United States anyway. The supposed combatants included, according to the tale, the conflict involved Choctaw warriors and aggressive, large, hairy humanoids, which sound like Sasquatch to me. Sorry if I bumped the mic there. The legend suggests the war was triggered by a series of attacks, including kidnappings and raids on Choctaw settlements. The battle's resolution, oral tradition, supposedly holds the Choctaw warriors fought and killed some of the creatures, driving the survivors away. So some of them ran away, and it's believed that 3 of them officially were actually killed. The 3 of the Bigfoot creatures were actually killed. So what really took place here? What was the reason for these warriors to have to attack these Bigfoot to begin with? Well, what turns out to have happened during this was apparently some women and children were missing, and they kept happening. Like they were being kidnapped, they were disappearing, and it's like, what's going on? What's the reasoning here? What's happening? It was a mystery as to what was taking place. And then the Choctaw, basically pulled a bunch of warriors together, including some of them that ranged up to almost 7 feet tall. Massive warriors that were in this Native American tribe in 1855 that then started their search and such, and they noticed very large tracks. And they followed the tracks for a few miles, and they got to an area where there were mounds, appeared to be burial mounds around the area, and then the smell of death basically was in the air, like a terrible smell of death. And many bodies of women and children, bones, half-eaten bodies were all over the place, and there were all these monsters, these Sasquatch/Bigfoot type monsters, which again is unbecoming of Bigfoot. A lot of people have had friendly encounters with Bigfoot. One case that's been talked about was where this person had like a yellow towel around their neck, whatever, to kind of, wipe sweat off. And this female Bigfoot liked the towel so much she couldn't get her eyes off it. And the man passed out. The man that had it, he was out kind of hiking. He passed out after seeing the male Sasquatch, which was much more imposing, a darker, meaner looking thing. He passed out in fear, basically, and wet himself. And when he woke up, he noticed the towel was missing, but then there was a leaf filled with grubs left there. And it was like the Sasquatch way of saying, like, a trade. Like, okay, we'll take this, but we'll give you this back. Like, we'll give you our food back in return. So it's like a friendly thing that you think of like, like animals don't do that. This must be something well beyond an animal. Animals don't just say, here, take our food. They'll maybe steal whatever you have, and that's the end of it. So very interesting record out there. An interesting account with Bigfoot. A lot of people have friendly encounters with Bigfoot, whereas in this case, it's a lot different. And you always wonder, could this have been a Sasquatch or could this have been other things? But some Sasquatches have been known to be aggressive, particularly the red-haired ones, which reek of Nephilim giants and such, maybe some kind of mix. I've always wondered, it's always been a big debate as to what a Sasquatch truly is. Is it just a made-up thing? I don't think so, only because there are so many accounts. Even Jim Hammond, like an associate pastor of the church I go to, of course. His father is the senior pastor, Mac Hammond. Living Word Christian Center, by the way, locally in Brooklyn Park, here in Minnesota. Obviously, not everybody listening to this show is from Minnesota and knows anything about Living Word Christian Center. But even he said, and you think like, it's like, even he said, there has to be some truth to this because we're talking like, thousands and thousands to even millions of stories that have been brought up over the course of time. They can't all be BS. It's impossible. They can't all be fake. So that's where it makes you think like there has to be something to this. Like a lot of stuff is made up. People looking for attention or they have a wild imagination. There's always that out there. But a lot of it's real as well. Just like I always talk about, like we talk about as well, a lot of these mythological heroes of old, the men of renown, people like Hercules and such, they were real. They were absolutely real. When you read biblical accounts, not saying that Hercules is in the Bible, but men of renown, giants, people that could do crazy things, it's becoming more and more believable that it's not just people from Greece just made all this stuff up. There has to be some truth to it. And accounts are that an angel and a woman, or like a small g god and a woman, made it together to create this Hercules, Achilles, Colossus. You could go on up and down the list. Whereas to me, more than likely a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot is a chimera. More like, how there's all different kinds of big giant, like in myths and legends and such, of these humanoid, animal-like monsters that have existed over the course of time. Even something like a sphinx. That's a conversation. Minotaurs, fawns, griffins and such. Who's to say that a Sasquatch might not be a mix of something like a bear or a gorilla with an angel? An angel, a fallen angel, not just an angel, a fallen angel. Because notice how all the time when they talk about the size of a Bigfoot, it's always something ranging from 7 to 10 feet tall. That's Nephilim size in a lot of ways. Nephilim, or at least a Rephaim giant, but that's a giant. It's a giant. It's not something that's typical. It's a monster. It's a big thing. It's you could say it's strange flesh, so to speak. It's bigger than normal. Bigger than normal. So anyhow. When back to the story of the War of 1855, the Bigfoot War, was that upon finding the site, the warriors were enraged and wanted revenge. And, well, of course they would, because they want this to stop happening. Not just about revenge, but this needs to stop. There has to be an end to this nonsense. And the battle ensued. Several of the Sasquatch / Bigfoot / hairy large humanoids ran away. They ran away at the sight of the powerful warriors and their weapons and such, like arrows and weapons and such, axes, hatchets, whatever you'd call it, that they may have had in 1855 around that time. Guns, actually. They had guns, believe it or not. Yes, they did. They had guns. Yes, they did. Three of them remained, and the battle ensued. Eventually, over the course of time, the three were killed. The last one was chased down after the first two, but obviously it didn't all come for free, so to speak. One of the leaders, who happened to be half Frenchman, half Native American, according to legend, according to the story, his head was ripped off by these giant beings because of their incredible strength. So his head was literally ripped off. And we always come back to what a Bigfoot looks like, what a Bigfoot is similar to. It's like every time you see Chewie or Chewbacca in Star Wars, that's like exactly what a Bigfoot looks like. So kind of interesting. I always think of Chewbacca here, and you always think of Chewbacca's Bigfoot, and you kind of put two and two together. It's the same type of thing, where the incredible strength and all that, very, very large, larger than normal, definitely larger than a person, but a humanoid being that understands what you're saying and can kind of communicate with you despite the fact it doesn't speak English or anything along those lines. You can communicate. Heck, my cat Chloe, many years ago, incredibly intelligent. My mom simply said, "Unlock the door." And what did Chloe do? She hit the exact spot and unlocked the door. Shocking, scary, almost scary. The intelligence of a mere cat. She just touched the lock and it turned, and it's just like, oh my God. I mean that just sends shivers down your spine, goosebumps, or whatever else. So obviously there's intelligence to all of these, to even regular animals, much less like a humanoid creature like this. But again, didn't come as it didn't come for free. Obviously, the battle took place, and at least one person had their head ripped off, and it was one of the leaders of the group, and that was most unfortunate, to say the least. Yes, that the conversation is that the legend suggests that the war was triggered by a series of attacks, including kidnappings and raids on Choctaw settlements. Yeah, see, that's what happened. Women and children were taken away, and then ultimately were partially eaten, so to speak, killed and partially eaten, and it was disgusting. I mean, could you imagine coming upon a scene like that? It'd be horrifying. The battle's resolution, of course, at the end of the day, oral traditions supposedly hold that the Choctaw warriors fought and killed some of the creatures, that'd be 3 of them, driving the survivors away. So kind of like, again, when we come back to the Battle of Jericho, so many people assume that, well, you know how the Battle of Jericho, even just a few years ago, I didn't realize that the men in that place were all giants. Even though there is accounts in the Bible that they were, I just didn't get it. You know how you miss parts? And it happened to be a pretty dang important part. There's a reason why so many of the Israelites were terrified about possibly going into the land of Canaan in the city of Jericho, because the people were, the beings there were so huge. The people there, the giants. It turns out they were giants, but some as tall as cedar trees supposedly, which is insane. Rather than, or if they were exaggerating or not, we don't know. But still, obviously much taller than a regular human being. So probably 9 feet or beyond, which is horrifying. Whereas if it's a cedar tree, it could be up to 40 feet. I don't know about that, but who knows? Who's to say? What am I leading in towards? It's like I'm almost losing track of where I'm supposed to be here. But no, the conversation is most of us assume that everyone in Jericho was killed. All those warriors there were killed. Odds are, and the reason why there are so many giants later on, including Goliath himself, King Og, and many others, and obviously scientific evidence, findings, archaeological findings support that many giants were in what is now known as the United States of America, including even Minnesota, believe it or not, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania. You could go on forever. And every state probably in the U.S. has had some giants. But especially like Ohio and such, Pennsylvania, it's really heavy there, and over in the kind of like Oregon and such areas as well, Oregon, California, places like that. They got away. A bunch of them escaped. They weren't all wiped out. They escaped, just like took place here. That's what I was leading towards here. So interesting, to say the least. Obviously, only 3 were actually killed in that whole Battle of 1855. War of 1805, Bigfoot War of 1855. But it's pretty fascinating to think about. And my overall thoughts on Bigfoot, like I said, do I believe they're real? Again, based on the number of accounts that have been out there for many, 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 many years, going all the way back to Native American times and way before Native American times, possibly dating, thousands of years in the past, like, large shadow monsters, so to speak, dating way back into the past. And according to legends and such, I think Bigfoot's real, yes, I do. For the longest time, I thought it was just kind of a bunch of BS. It's just silly, like, why are we talking about this? This is silly. Like, obviously, paranormal this, or, obviously giants were real and such. But who's to say Bigfoot isn't real? And how fitting that the name Bigfoot would be, in a battle with Native Americans and such, or people believing that. How Native American does the name Bigfoot sound anyway to begin with? It sounds like something created by a Native American. That's Bigfoot. How? That's Bigfoot. Just like, think about this. Gitche Gumee. What's Gitche Gumee? Lake Superior, right? The largest lake in the world, largest freshwater lake in the world. What does Gitche Gumee mean? Big lake. Simple, straightforward, common sense. Big lake. What's Bigfoot? Large creature with very large feet. Yeah, very large feet, much larger than a normal human being. Bigfoot. There's a tribe called the Blackfoot. You know, the Blackfoot tribe, like Winterhawk. That's a movie that came out in the 1970s. Real, yes, the Blackfoot tribe. Black Hawk, the Black Hawk, like Black Hawks. There's the Black Hawk tribe, of course. The Chicago Blackhawks, yeah, it's real. So how Native American does Bigfoot sound? Extremely. So that's where I got to think that name, the origin of that name came from, is from Native Americans to begin with. So Bigfoot, I can imagine them pointing like Bigfoot, like yes, go get them. Basically, we're gonna battle with Bigfoot, and it's fascinating stuff. Native Americans, obviously insanely intelligent people, back then and today, of course. But they live definitely a different lifestyle than a lot of other people did in 1855. But it is what it is. They still were willing to advance as well with guns and such. Not saying guns are a wonderful thing, but at the same time, I'm not a gun grabber either. That's for darn sure. If they're needed, they're needed. It is what it is, especially for hunting, or in this case, maybe for protection. At the end of the day, so a very interesting thing. Interesting, kind of sad that this had to happen, but that's how this is what is out there, like folklore, legend, and such. It sounds very believable to me. It does. It sounds very believable. A lot of Native American myths are believable. A lot of them are. Some of the stuff they've seen in the past, like giants in the United States of America, and the origin of the word how, when they would put up their hand, like showing all 5 of their fingers. Talk is that the reason for that is to, like, are you human or are you this other thing with 6 fingers? 6 fingers, well, a thumb and 5 fingers basically, which would be a Nephilim giant, a Rephaim giant, whatever. Something that's not human, that's bigger and a monster, basically, is what, these half human, half, small g creatures were and still exist today, unfortunately. Because as Genesis 6 says, there were giants in the land at that time and also after that. That's right. Also after that still counts today, as far as I'm concerned, and I think a lot of people out there would agree. A lot of people that know a lot more on the topic than I do, like the L.A. Marzulis and such, would agree. The history of our Earth is far different than what we can imagine. Obviously, that's what every Blurry Creatures episode starts off with like one of their guests from England said in one of the early episodes, and it's so true. The history of our Earth is far different than what we can imagine. It's pretty amazing, actually. Continuing conversation here. What's saying here? They say how there's no actual physical evidence and all that, but that's okay. No body bones or DNA of a Bigfoot-like creature has ever been scientifically verified. Hair samples supposedly from the Bigfoot have been proven to be from other animals. Okay. All right. A known myth, the Bigfoot phenomenon is widely recognized by scholars as a cultural myth perpetuated by a combination of folklore, misidentification of known animals, and hoaxes. Well, that's the unfortunate part. Yes, there's hoaxes everywhere. But at the same time, some of the giant finds that were called hoaxes, the finds did happen. And then, of course, people like the Smithsonian that want to cover everything up turn it into hoaxes. And that's extremely frustrating because there absolutely were giants here. You just need an imagination to even think about it. The Sasquatch figure is derived in part from indigenous stories of a wild man or hairy man, which existed long before the modern Bigfoot myth gained notoriety in the 20th century. So yes, it goes way further back. The modern American Bigfoot phenomenon began in 1958, following a story about a large footprints in California. However, the War of 1855 story gained much traction. it gained traction much more recently through podcasts and online communities dedicated to cryptozoology, including the Mysterious Adventures podcast, which I hope you don't mind me doing. Because we got to talk about Bigfoot sometimes, don't we? Got to talk about Bigfoot on Mysterious Adventures, and here we are finally talking about it. And, well, figured it would be kind of some kind of giant conversation. Well, Bigfoot is a giant, if you didn't notice. Is Bigfoot a giant? I think he's a giant. He, it, they. I think they are giants. Bigfoot are giants, because it ain't just one thing. But Bigfoot, like the being, the creature, whatever, is a giant. As far as I'm concerned, it's honestly the most believable thing I think is actual real giants, like in the Bible, than anything else. But at the same time, a lot of these other creatures and such, there have been so many accounts out there, like the Wolfman, which is horrifying. One of the scariest things out there is the Wolfman. I'd have to think werewolves and such. Holy moly, those are scary. Dogman, Wolfman. Horrifying stories of like the most frightening, scary growl and just like a yell out from that being, which would scare the living crap out of any human being. It would just weaken you, just the sound of it. So we'll have episodes about those in the future, I'm sure. Absolutely, we'll have conversations, and for heaven's sake, I'd love to get some guests on this show that can, talk about their accounts of the of whatever it is, Bigfoot. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you have stories to tell, paranormal stories, Bigfoot sightings, Bigfoot stories, Bigfoot accounts, Sasquatch, of course, same thing. Any other cryptoids, like Wolfman, the Mothman, which is more of like a spiritual thing, I think. To me, I think I saw that one. Yeah, there's an episode further back. If you're brand new to the show, there's a Mothman episode. That was me in that one. Maybe the Hat Man. That's another one of those spirit ones out there. There have been many accounts of that. Obviously, werewolves and such. So, the next episode of the show, which at the time when I was talking about it and how he'd changed so much, the coworker Carl, but a different name, but very similar name. Like we'll just call him Carl. I was talking about possibly having a Halloween episode about Vlad Tepes and kind of stories about what he was really like the real Dracula, for around Halloween time coming up here very soon. If I am able to, I probably will do an episode about that. If not, it'll have to wait till next year, which would be kind of sad, but it'd be nice to be able to do that, and I'll try to get that out here close to Halloween here, if I can, to talk about Vlad Tepes, the real Dracula, the real one, in Transylvania, which is also known as, in the country of Romania, the region of Transylvania. Oh yeah, it's all real. He didn't turn into bats or anything, but some other accounts that you might see in Castlevania games are similar. More similar than you'd like to believe, but scary and sad stuff. But again, very happy to be back behind the mic again for this show, Mysterious Adventures. I hope this was decent. I hope this was all right. I apologize. I might be a little bit rusty, a teeny bit, not recording podcasts, but recording this podcast, because I've been busy with the sports ones. Timberwolves Explosion season opener, Brave the Wild season opener, Minnesota Vikings are in full bloom and such. So, honestly, doing these shows, I think these are more interesting than just sports, as much as I love sports and I'm a huge sports fan. But, I've been doing those forever and ever and ever. To be, this is kind of a fresh, new, and exciting thing to be podcasting about this, even though there's a lot of other podcasts that talk about this kind of stuff that maybe you think are better than this one. But maybe you do love what we do here, and if you'd like to contribute to the show by becoming a guest, it'd be greatly appreciated, greatly. Contact me at paladinolive@yahoo.com or paladinolive@gmail.com. Either one would be greatly appreciated, and let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation, be it paranormal or whatever it is. Maybe just you have a lot of knowledge about the Genesis 6 giants and beyond. Giants out there. Maybe you saw something, or some people have. So that would be more than welcome on the show if you'd like to bring it to the table. With that said, gonna sign off for today. Another about a half-hour episode. I hope it's, again, if you like the show, please give it a 5-star rating. Please do. Share it with your friends on social media. It'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. With that said, so thank you again so very much for listening. Really appreciate you. Tell a friend, like I just repeated like 6 times, and join me on the next adventure as we may dive into some Vlad Tibet conversation. Until then, take care and share your adventures with us.